Hey guys, and welcome back to another skill on Python for network engineers. Functions happen to be a really common concept throughout programming, and using Python, you're going to be using functions all the time. So what exactly is a function then? What are we talking about here? Well, really, at its core, just conceptualize a Python function as a group of code. And the type of code we're talking about can literally be anything. And we'll see this throughout this skill. You can have really simple functions that just print out something. Now, functions can be built in. There's going to be built-in functions within the Python library. You can also have third-party functions which you can install and import into your Python code. And we can also have custom functions written by us. Now, like I said, whilst functions is simply a group of code, and that code can literally be anything. If the code can literally be anything, what is the advantage to using a function? Why put it into a function? What is so important here? Well, realistically, what functions do, it allows code to become much more reusable, and it makes your code much more modular. And using functions allows you to adhere to what is called the dry principle. What is the dry principle? Well, it means simply don't repeat yourself. As opposed to just continually repeating the same type of code, the best thing to do is to put that code into a function, and then you can just call that code as many times as you need. Now, another important concept to understand about Python functions is that functions will always return a result. And by default, that value is going to be the special value within Python, none. And we've talked about this value in previous skills. However, if we need our function to actually return something and not just none by default, then we are able to instruct our function to do so. And we'll be able to see how we can do that later on within this very skill using the return keyword. So let me just give you a short example to help you conceptualize the utility and usefulness of Python functions, how they really do help us be able to achieve this principle of DRY, don't repeat yourself, and why it makes our code much more modular and easy to manage. Okay, so let's dive into Visual Studio Code then. So let me go into my directory here. I'll say cd Python neteng, and I'll go into my hidden directory where my virtual environment is, and let me just activate this. And I'll make a directory just called maybe function examples, and we'll cd into there. Cool. So what I'm going to, if I can type correctly, clear the screen, what I'm going to do here is to create an example just called example1. Super duper simple, and what we'll do is we'll open this in VS Code then. So Python neteng, function examples, and we'll go into example1. Okay, so this won't be the most realistic example, it's just going to help you conceptualize the concept here. So let's imagine that we wanted to, what will we do here? Let's imagine we wanted to print out some type of warning, okay? Just say this device is owned by IPv0 systems. If you access this without authorization, bad stuff will happen. Okay, so let's say we have this warning here, and we want to present this at the beginning of our message and at the very end. So what we can do is just print out some random text here, blah 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 blah, doesn't actually matter. Similarly, blah blah blah. Okay, now the crucial thing is we want to have this message at the start and at the end, okay? So what I'll do here is just copy this and I'll paste it in again. So let's just save this just now and we'll run this script. So let me clear the screen, pull this up a wee touch. And we'll say python3 example1.py, hit enter. And as we can see here at the very top, we have our warning message, we have some text in between, doesn't matter what that is. And at the very end, we close off the message with the exact same warning. Okay, so this isn't the most useful thing, but it's serving its purpose. We've got our warning at the top and our warning at the bottom. Okay, so let's just say we wanted to change our warning message, and we could maybe say, I don't know, like, all devices in this network are owned by, and let's say the company name may be changed or something. Let's just say CBTN systems, and just delete this part here, and we'll change the end here. And let's just say do not touch ... or else. Some really ominous message. Okay, so as we can see here, our warning message has changed. Now because it's changed, we've changed it here, but we also have to change it here as well. So then I'd also need to alter the code at this part here. I'd have to go in and take all this away, just add all this, and I suppose I could, in this case, just use a copy-paste job. But like I say, this is a very simple example. Now, as we can see here, this warning statement is only being used in two areas of our code, in line 1 and line 4. It really isn't too big of a hassle for us to just delete one and then maybe copy paste a little bit and we're done. But can you imagine if the code was way more complex than this? And we had to update the code in multiple different areas. Having to go into each iteration of that code and make the very same change to all instances of the code really isn't very efficient. And it's also prone to error. So if you happen to maybe say CBTN systems and on the second one you're typing this out again and you only say system, suddenly you have a difference between this part of the code and this part of the code when in fact they should be the same. Now again, this is a really trivial example, but let me show you how we can solve this type of problem using a function. Okay, so do not worry about the syntax here. We'll definitely go through the details as we go through this skill. What I'm going to do is create a function, and I'm going to call this function warning text, okay? And like I say, a function can literally be any type of code, and all this function is going to do is print out that warning statement. So I can just say something like this: network belongs to CBTN. Don't mess around with it. That's our new warning text. Now what we're going to do here is pretty much do the same thing, but instead of having to manually type this out, what we're just going to do is to call this function. So what I'm going to say here is warning text, and what I can also do is just print out our blah 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 codes, and again, more blah blah blah, whatever. And at the very end of our text, we could just call the warning function yet again. So if I save this, watch what happens, okay? Let's clear the screen, we arrow up and hit enter. Look at this, we're getting the effect we want. This network belongs to CBTN, don't mess around with it. We get that warning at the top. We have our random text in the middle, and at the very bottom, we have the exact same code executing. That print statement, this network belongs to CBTN, don't mess around with it. And here's the thing, if we wanted to update this, well, we just update it in one place. So let's just say this belongs to CBT nuggets instead. Let's be a little bit more explicit. We don't have to change any of this code here. We don't have to change it in multiple places, do any copy and pasting. Just update this little function, and that is what the code is referencing. So now if I just arrow up, hit enter, look at this, it's been updated in all the same areas. We don't need to worry about getting into this part of the code and then deleting this and adding in the new change, and then going to another line in the code, deleting another part and adding in another section. Because we have this nice, tightly defined modular function, we can just make the change in one area, and we can call that function as many times as we want. Like I said, we can just keep calling it, say warning text, and if we save this, we can use this function as many times as we want. So this is what we're going to be exploring in this skill right here, the concept of functions, how we can use them, how we can call them. What are the rules at play here? So we really do have a lot to get to within this skill. And how about we start by finding out what built-in functions that Python has to offer us? Well, that is what we're going to be doing in the very next nuggets. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.
Thanks for watching. If you're interested in a career in IT, or just looking to brush up your IT skills, then be sure to visit cbtnuggets.com for a free trial.